Should you get the Samsung Galaxy S9 or maybe the S8 or the Note 8 from last year since they're actually cheaper now? That is the question, which I'm going to answer in this video. So the S9 is officially going to be unveiled this Sunday, and we already know pretty much every single thing, every single detail about the Samsung Galaxy S9, from the final design to the exact specs, all the new features, software, battery storage, price, and so much more. So grab some popcorn, sit back, relax, and let's take a look at all the main changes that the S9 brings to the table when compared to the S8, S8 Plus, and the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Okay, so starting off with the design, the Samsung Galaxy S9 looks almost identical to the S8. So we do get slightly thinner bezels on the top and on the bottom, and the overall shape of the phone is closer to the Note 8 than to the S8. So it's a bit more squared off rather than the S8 design, which was a bit more rounded. But still, the S9 isn't as squared off as the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, so overall the design is basically in between the S8 and the Note 8's design. Aside from this, the only visible change really is on the back. So the S9 now comes with a dual camera module, same as the Note 8, and then the fingerprint reader has also been repositioned to the middle as opposed to the right of the phone. But other than that, all of these phones are pretty similar to one another. Now, something that I do want to mention when it comes to the design of the S9 is the fact that the S9 Plus, for example, is thicker by 0.4 millimeters compared to the S8 Plus, but shorter by about 2 millimeters, and then also wider by 0.4 millimeters. So design-wise, the Note 8 is the only one that kind of stands out a bit more between those three. Also being, the bulkiest one, the one with the larger display. And overall, I personally prefer the design of the S9 because of the thinner bezels. But yeah, again, this is just a matter of preference. Let me know in the comments which design style do you guys prefer, S8, S9, or Samsung Galaxy Note 8. And also don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel, and also turn on notifications by tapping on that bell icon so that you don't miss any future in-depth Samsung Galaxy S9 coverage. But yeah, moving on to section number 2, we have the display. So in terms of the display size, we have a 5.8-inch display on the S8 and the Samsung Galaxy S9, the regular models, and 6.2 inches on the S8 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, and then 6.3 inches on the Note 8. So if you want the larger display, go with the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Now, when it comes to the resolution, all of these phones actually have, interesting enough, the exact same resolution at 2960 by 1440. But the S8 and the S9, since they have the smallest display, they actually have the highest pixel density at 531 ppi. So yeah, if you care about VR, mobile VR especially, the smaller S8 and S9 are actually the best options out of these phones. Now, when it comes to the display panel, all of these 5 phones actually have the same AMOLED display panel. They all support HDR10. Now the Note 8 does have a higher peak brightness than the Samsung Galaxy S8 and the S8 Plus, so outdoors the Note 8 and also the S9 will be a better option. But other than that, the displays on these phones are pretty much identical. Again, Note 8, highest display, larger display, and then S8 or S9, they have the highest PPI if you care about VR. Okay, moving on to something that's quite a bit more interesting, and that is the camera. So on back-facing camera on all of these phones, well, on the X8, actually, we have a single camera module, 12 megapixels, f1.7 aperture, same thing on the S8 Plus. Now, on the Note 8, we actually have a dual camera module, 12 megapixels, and f1.7 aperture. And then on the S9, we have a single camera module, so same as the S8 and the S8 Plus, 12 megapixels, but this time f1.5 aperture, and that's actually a switchable aperture, so f1.5 and also f2.4. And then on the S9 Plus, we actually have a dual camera module, 12 megapixels, and f1.5 again. So no switchable aperture on the S9 Plus, but we do get the dual camera module. Okay, so what does this all mean? Well, f1.5 essentially means that the camera on the S9 and the S9 Plus, they're better in low light photography because the aperture is larger and it lets more light into the sensor. Now, the dual camera module that you get with the Note 8 and the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, with that you can actually zoom in, you get optical zoom, so you can zoom in without losing any quality, and then you also get a portrait mode effect, which you've seen on the iPhone X, the Pixel, and also the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. And speaking of portrait mode, this might be coming to the Samsung Galaxy S9 because of that switchable aperture. So S9, Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, and Note 8, they all have that portrait mode effect. And then the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 and S8 Plus, they have the optical zoom. Now, moving on to the front-facing camera, the main change, the main difference, and the main improvement on the S9 and the S9 Plus is the aperture. So we got an aperture increase from f1.7 to f1.6. So overall, the front-facing camera is better in low light on the S9 and the S9 Plus. And then in terms of video on the front-facing camera, we get Quad HD video on all of these phones, so no changes here. And when it comes to the actual video, there's quite a few changes here. So S9 and S9 Plus, they support 4K video and up to 60 frames per second. That's up to 30 frames per second on all the previous phones. And then They also support slow motion in up to 960 frames per second in 720p, up from 240 frames per second also in 720p on the S8, S8 Plus, and the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Okay, so as a conclusion, when it comes to the camera, overall, with the S9 and the S9 Plus, you get better low-light photography with larger aperture, you get a higher frame rate when recording video, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, a few camera improvements which might be useful, maybe not. It depends on how often you actually use the camera for photo and video. Okay, moving on to section number 4, we have the specs and the performance. Do we get any performance and spec improvements? Obviously we do, from the S8, S8 Plus, Note 8 to the S9 and S9 Plus. Well, first things first, those phones actually came with a Snapdragon 835 processor in the US and the Exynos 8895 for the international models. The S9 and the S9 Plus, they come with a Snapdragon 845 for the US model and the Exynos 9810 for the international models. So what's the actual difference between those processors? How much faster are the new ones over the previous models? So let's take a look at some Geekbench scores. So comparing the Geekbench scores on all of these processors, it seems that the Exynos 9810 is almost twice more powerful than the Exynos 8895 from last year when it comes to single core performance, and just over 2000 points in terms of the multi-core performance. So a pretty good improvement when it comes to the Exynos 9810. We can also see a decent performance improvement for the Snapdragon 845 from the 835, although this one isn't really that noticeable. Yeah, so overall, if you can, and if you're getting your hands on a Samsung Galaxy S9 or an S9 Plus, do try and get the international model that comes with the Exynos 9810, because that's overall a much better option in terms of performance when compared to the Snapdragon 845. Now, aside from the processors, another difference between the smartphones is actually in terms of the amount of RAM. So on the S8, S8 Plus, and interesting enough, the S9 as well, you get 4 GB of RAM, whereas on the Note 8 Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, you get 6 GB of RAM. So you're probably wondering, well, why? Does it really matter? Do you need 6 GB of RAM? Well, yes. If you have a Samsung phone, you kind of do. So that's because of TouchWiz, or Samsung Experience, how it's called right now, the overlay that Samsung uses and Samsung added on top of Android for all their services and extra apps and so on. And it takes up a lot of memory. Samsung Experience takes up a lot of memory because of all the bloatware processes running in the background, such as Bixby. You have the Edge panel, not even to mention all the services for all the duplicate apps, such as the Galaxy Store, Samsung's Gallery app, Samsung's Calendar app, Samsung's messaging apps, and so many more duplicate apps from Samsung, essentially. So if you want the best Samsung experience, get the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. Okay, so we've talked about the design, the display, the camera, the specs. What about special features? Do we get anything new and exciting with the S9 and the S9 Plus? Well, yes, we do. Kind of. So compared to the S8 and the S8 Plus, we do get all the camera changes, which I've mentioned before, the switchable aperture, among with finally dual stereo speakers tuned by AKG. So the speakers on the S8 and the Note 8 and the S7 Edge, pretty much on every single Samsung device, they have been, not so great. I've actually made a speaker comparison video between multiple popular smartphones. So yeah, just tap on this card and you'll be taken to that video if you want to know more about the speaker sound quality between multiple popular smartphones. But yeah, moving on to the Note 8. The Note 8, something unique to the Note 8 is actually the S Pen, which in case you love taking notes on your phone and you also love using, S Notes instead of something far more superior such as Google Keep, then in that case you'll find the S Pen to be extremely useful in this case for this kind of stuff. But other than that, you can also make highlights, you can also take GIFs and a few more extra features. But other than that, this is the main selling feature of the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, and that's the S Pen. And then same as we've seen with the iPhone 10, the Samsung Galaxy S9 and the S9 Plus will also feature an emoji. Well, Samsung's version of Animojis. And aside from this, Face Unlock will get an improvement when it comes to speed and security by using both the facial recognition software for the front-facing camera and then also the iris scanner, so they would be using both at the same time. This would be possible, honestly, with the S8 and the Note 8 as well. But yeah, Samsung will probably not update these phones because, Samsung loves updates. But apart from this, we don't really get any new and unique features. The headphone jack is still there, and of course the only features that you'll see with the S9 are going to be the software tweaks that Samsung adds to TouchWiz. So new always-on display faces, and a few more interface tweaks and the Face Unlock, which I mentioned before. All of these features will probably not be coming to all the devices, even though they would essentially support it. So speaking of software, so the S9 and the S9 Plus, they're set to ship with Android 8.0 Oreo out of the box, which makes a lot of sense. But then even 8.0 is already outdated. Google is about to release 8.2 pretty soon for the Pixel, and Samsung will be releasing a new phone in March 2018 with Android 8.0, which by the way came out in August 2017. So why Samsung? And then if you take a look at the S8 and the S8 Plus, they're still running on Android 7.0, which is even crazier. They will be getting an update soon, by the way, but keep in mind that the update would be delayed by your carrier if you don't have an unlocked phone. And if you do have an unlocked phone, Samsung would actually be rolling these updates in waves, so it doesn't really mean that if you have an unlocked phone, you'll receive the update day one. However, the S9 and the S9 Plus will feature some Samsung Experience / TouchWiz improvements, which I mentioned before. So overall, in terms of the software, the S9 and the S9 Plus are a better choice. Okay, moving on to the battery, there's not that much to talk about the battery when it comes to the S9 and the S9 Plus. And that's because they actually have the exact same battery size as the S8 and the S8 Plus from last year. So 3000 mAh on the S8 and the S9, and 35 mAh, 3500 on the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus and S8 Plus. The Note 8, in case you're wondering, had a 3300 mAh battery, but yeah, the battery life won't actually be the same because the Exynos 9810 and the Snapdragon 845, they're much more power efficient processors than last year's models. So even if they have the same battery size, the battery life won't be actually the same. The S9 and the S9 Plus, they would last you longer. Now, when it comes to the storage options, 64 gigabytes is the baseline option on all of these models, but you can actually expand this even further for an extra 256 gigabytes of storage with a microSD card if you really need to, because they all still feature the microSD card slot. And finally, let's talk about the favorite section for all of you, and that's obviously the price. So the smaller S9 is set to start at around $900 or £800 in the UK, while the S8 actually started from around $700 or £690 in the UK. So yeah, the S9 is going to be more expensive. And then the Note 8 actually starts currently at $960 or £869. So these are the current prices for the S8 and the Note 8. However, once the S9 gets announced, so next Sunday, the prices for the S8, S8 Plus, and also the Note 8, they're actually going to drop. Okay, so in the end, as a conclusion, which one is a better phone? Which one is a better device? And which one should you guys get? Well, obviously the S9 Plus is the best device out of all of these phones. But which one should you actually get? Well, considering that last year's models are getting cheaper, I would honestly say get the regular S8 from last year. There's no point in getting the S9 unless you're upgrading from an older device such as the S7 or the S6, or maybe even a different older device such as an iOS device. So the S8, I would say this is the one that is worth it the most because it's overall a pretty good phone. It's going to be significantly cheaper than last year, and it's the camera isn't that bad. The performance is pretty good. You can install custom ROM on this thing, so yeah, you can make the performance even better. You can even put stock Android if you really want to do that, and if you know how to do that. Then the S8 still comes with a large enough display that's 5.8 inches, but you can also use this one with one hand. So if you care about that, that's an advantage as well. And overall, apart from the camera improvements and the performance improvements that we get with the S9, there's not really that much to warrant an upgrade over the S8. And when it comes to the Note 8, I would say honestly avoid it for now. The price won't drop as drastically as the S8 because it's a different series, it's a different lineup from the regular S series. And overall with the Note 8 you get a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus with a larger display, a smaller battery actually, 2 extra gigabytes of RAM, which is useful, and then you have the S Pen, which might be useful for some of you, but overall I would say probably not. So if you really need something with a larger display, so Note 8, just get the S8 Plus because it's going to be much cheaper. And again, there's not that much difference between the two. But yeah, I've included some links in the description for some pretty good offers on the S8, the S8 Plus, and the Note 8 from last year. And also subscribe if you want to see more in-depth coverage on the Samsung Galaxy S9. I'll have lots of coverage in the next few days on the Samsung Galaxy S9. And also don't forget your notifications by tapping on that bell icon so that you get notified as soon as a brand new cool epic tech video comes out. But yeah, let me know in the comments what do you guys think about all of these phones. Which one would you actually get and why? And also don't forget to check out my Samsung Galaxy S9 versus iPhone 10 comparison that I did a day ago. So yeah, definitely check out this video if you want to see how the S9 compares to the S9 Plus and the iPhone 10. But yeah, this has been pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Daniel. Shout out to every single one of you that made it until the end of this video. Leave a comment in the description using the hashtag, I don't know, made it to the end. If you made it until the end, I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Son of Tech, signing out. Cheers.